Good morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ and here is your latest forecast update nationwide for Thursday, May 22nd, 2025. There is a lot of detail to get through today. The flooding emergency unfolding across coastal New South Wales is going to be our top story. Major flooding occurring at about 6 or 7 different rivers this morning, stretching between Coffs Harbour down to Newcastle. In the wake of significant rainfall that's dominated the region's weather scene over the last couple of days, we've had some pretty extraordinary rainfall accumulations with unfortunately more rainfall still to come. If you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing, but let's get stuck straight into the video this morning. You can still see on the radar and the satellite imagery a lot more rainfall still streaming into coastal parts of New South Wales in the wake of, like I said, some very significant rainfall observations again overnight. Regions around Coffs Harbour have picked up nearly 300 millimetres in the last 20 hours or so, and rainfall accumulations haven't been much better down around the Kempsey and the Taree area, already saturated and very badly impacted communities from the floods. They've already picked up accumulations between 100 to 150 millimetres overnight, with, like I said, more rainfall still to come. So what's driving this? Well, we have a low pressure system beginning to develop now offshore from Grafton. This is driving all of this rainfall into New South Wales. It's dragging it in from the Coral Sea and the Tasman Sea out of the northeast, and you can see the water's very warm offshore from New South Wales at this point in time. So the evaporation next to the coastline is extraordinary, and that's why we're seeing such incredible rainfall accumulations and such driving and persistent rainfall across this part of New South Wales, which has unfortunately led to some of the worst flooding that we've seen in years through these regions. There is a little bit of good news. The river levels around Taree and Gloucester are beginning to drop this morning. They're not dropping quickly and they're not dropping by much, but there is a little bit of flood relief there this morning, with water levels beginning to recede out of some of the already flooded homes and businesses through these regions. Water levels, however, are moving in the opposite direction. They're only going up around the Port Macquarie, the Kempsey, Nambucca Heads and Coffs Harbour region, and they're expected to continue to go up throughout the remainder of today. Also some decent rainfall down for Sydney and the Sydney area. I'll get to that in a later part of this forecast update. Speaking of forecast update, let's jump into the forecast aspect of this, and I'm going to completely discard the regular forecast models, just considering the fact that they've kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of location, but they're nowhere near the intensity of the rainfall that we're currently seeing across New South Wales. That job has been left to the convective forecast models, which have done a very good job at estimating the intensity, just purely because they are generally those intense forecast models. They come out with the much higher forecasts right out of the gate, and that's what we've kind of been using here to predict this weather event, because that's kind of the rainfall that we've been seeing. So showers currently at their worst around Coffs Harbour and Nambucca Heads. We've got some pretty serious rainfall accumulations here with 150 millimetres every 3 hours moving through. That is intense rainfall if ever I've seen some for New South Wales. The good news is that for these northernmost locations, Grafton, Coffs Harbour and Nambucca Heads, the rainfall only has a few more hours to come through until it begins to head further towards the south as this low pressure system continues to materialise and mature throughout the remainder of today. We're expecting it to drag the rainfall further south with it, and the rainfall should clear out of Coffs Harbour, Nambucca Heads, Kempsey, Port Macquarie, and then down towards Taree and Foster by much later tonight and into early tomorrow morning, dragging it down through the Newcastle area through tomorrow morning, Sydney through later tomorrow morning, and then through later tomorrow afternoon and into tomorrow evening. We're expecting some heavy falls to materialise into the southeast corner of New South Wales and through the Australian Capital Territory. This is a rough outline of where the rainfall is going to be at any particular time, but again, the convective forecast models with their high resolution detail, they generally hit the nail right on the head, but still a few more hours of heavy rainfall still to come through for Coffs Harbour, and then that heavy rainfall going to continue for Nambucca Heads, Kempsey and Port Macquarie into later tonight, finally clearing off by early tomorrow morning, where the heavy falls are then expected to concentrate themselves further south into the southeast corner of New South Wales through tomorrow afternoon and into tomorrow evening, before the rainfall finally clears out of New South Wales and the eastern half of Victoria through Friday night and into early Saturday morning. So still a bit of a wild run of weather still over the next 48 hours. There is going to be some very intense falls over the next 48 hours. The heaviest falls occurred on Monday and Tuesday, but we are expecting comparatively heavy falls later tonight and into tomorrow morning, especially for locations around the Barrington Tops and locations outside of Coffs Harbour, Nambucca Heads, through Kempsey and then across towards Port Macquarie as well. Unfortunately, not only are these locations absolutely saturated and couldn't take another drop of rainfall, let alone another 100 mil, these locations here are actually expecting the worst of the rainfall to come through in the next kind of 24 to 48 hours or so. So the forecast really couldn't get much worse for these regions, unfortunately. This is rainfall accumulations over the next 48 hours. This is not including rainfall that we've already seen through this part of New South Wales. So rainfall accumulations over the next 48 hours looking very serious for some of these regions here, especially outside of Coffs Harbour and Nambucca Heads, with a further 200 to 250 millimetres still on the cards later tonight, moving through the Nambucca River and into the Macleay River that is it's not flowing, it's flooding through Kempsey and then down towards southwest Rocks. So some significant rainfall accumulation still expected in this general area here. Dare I say out towards Ebor and Dorrigo, depending on what showers come through, especially if they swing around briefly towards the east or even the southeast, which isn't overly likely at this point in time, but it's still a possibility. We could be seeing rainfall accumulations here up around the 200 or 300 millimeter mark throughout the next 24 to 36 hours as well. Some pretty impressive rainfall accumulations also expected through some of the mountainous areas adjacent to the coastline outside of Kempsey and Port Macquarie. Mount Seaview is one that rings a big bell right now, up to 150 millimetres of intense rainfall expected there, with brief periods of very intense rainfall expected to move through those locations. Out to the Barrington Tops as well, I do feel like this rainfall forecast here might be a little bit on the kind of lower end of things. It might be a little bit underbaked actually from the convective forecast models, with 150 millimetres or so coming through for those locations. Dare I say we could be seeing rainfall accumulations outside of Gloucester and the Barrington Tops up to 200 millimetres over the next 24 hours. Certainly some significant rainfall accumulations coming through. Getting quite a few questions in the comment section saying, well, we're only getting 60, 70, 80 millimetres or so in our location. Why are we currently experiencing the worst flooding that we've seen in years? Well, that's because the rainfall is occurring where the river's originating from. So especially around the Taree area, where they have had some very serious rainfall accumulations, but not for a couple of days now. The rainfall has been comparatively light yesterday and also this morning, but they're still currently experiencing their worst flooding since, I believe, 2021 through Taree. It's because the rainfall is continuing to pile in for the Barrington Tops, and that includes outside of Gloucester as well. So heavy rainfall's still piling in for these mountainous areas where these rivers feed from, and that's why we're still getting some very significant flooding through some of these locations, and that's why major flooding is continuing to get worse through these parts of New South Wales. Anyways, it is going to be a pretty grim picture as well as we get down to the southeastern corner of the state. We're expecting some heavy rainfall as well, especially through tomorrow morning and into tomorrow afternoon, clearing by Saturday morning though. So locations adjacent to the coastline such as Ulladulla, Batemans Bay, Narooma, Merriwillumba as well, we could be seeing rainfall accumulations there anywhere between 50 to 150 millimetres, with isolated falls up to 200, potentially even 220 millimetres along here. So it kind of tickles the category of intense rainfall. We could definitely be seeing some intense rainfall in these locations for brief periods of time, but I do feel that the rainfall forecast outside of Penrith and Sydney as a whole has been a little bit overdone here. Out towards the Warragamba Dam area, there's 250 millimetres or so on the forecast, and I believe that if we compare that to other forecast models, it's kind of between 60 to 100 millimetres or so. Locations into the western suburbs of Sydney will definitely receive up to 100 millimetres of rainfall. Penrith is one that rings a bell that could be seeing triple figures, and definitely out towards the Warragamba Dam as well, there'll be falls between 100 to 150 millimetres out there, likely to be the wetter spots into the southeast corner of New South Wales. Heavy falls also expected around Sydney through tomorrow. We could be seeing falls up to kind of between that 60 to 80 millimetre mark. Nothing much heavier than that though through the Sydney metro area and through the eastern suburbs. It will be interesting to see what we expect and what actually falls down through the Sydney area, and then also a bit of good rainfall as well, between 10 to 25 millimetres, potentially as much as 50 or even 75 millimetres expected into some of the pastoral districts of New South Wales around Wagga Wagga and Youngers, where the heaviest rainfall is going to be, but falls between 10 to 25 millimetres as far inland as Griffith, Hillston, Hay, Ivanhoe, Cobar, and those sort of locations as well. Ivanhoe and Cobar kind of on the outer edge of what rainfall can be expected there, but a couple of drops of rainfall still possible. The good news is beyond Friday, the rainfall does really begin to drop off here, and you can see that we're actually expecting a bit of a dry period across New South Wales. There will still be a few showers here and there, but rainfall not returning in a dramatic fashion until about the 1st of June or so. There will be some heavier falls as we get into the first week of June, but it looks like the rainfall properly clearing out of New South Wales and southeast Queensland for at least a week or so, but that's all it's going to take for these flood levels to kind of recede below the minor flooding alerts to these locations. They're still going to remain saturated for months to come, and like I said at the start of the video, considering how warm these sea temperatures are offshore from New South Wales right now, another one of these weather systems cannot be written off out till late June, early July. So we will still be seeing the risk of heavy rainfall through New South Wales, and it's gotten to the point where it does not take much for New South Wales to flood. So even if we've got moderate rainfall on the forecast, we could be looking at a pretty dire flooding situation across the coastal regions of New South Wales. This weather event has been the absolute worst case scenario. In fact, it has probably exceeded the worst case scenario forecasts at this point in time. Very upsetting to see, very sad to see. It was a bit of an oversight on my side. I definitely underplayed this, so again, I do sincerely apologise to those affected. And if you've got any feedback, please do let me know in the comment section down below. Always out for improvements here on the CyclonesOZ channel. And yeah, I do apologise to everybody that's been affected and thought that this was actually going to be a little bit of more moderate rain or on the lower side of heavy rainfall as opposed to the worst deluges that they've seen in years for some of these locations. Again, I will wear that one, so let me know in the comment section down below if you've got any feedback or a report for your location. In terms of other interesting weather happening around Australia, there's not an awful lot to be making mention of, apart from, of course, that torrential rainfall that's coming through across interior parts of Western Australia into early next week, and I'm going to get through this nice and briefly. We've got some pretty heavy falls here developing across the northwest of WA between the 26th of May out to the 31st of May, and this rainfall could definitely get quite heavy at times. We could be talking about falls between 200 to 300 millimetres here, spread over the course of a couple of days, so we're not expecting flat-out intense rainfall accumulations, but we're really now honing in on a location between Port Hedland and Broome for the most significant rainfall. So we're talking about Badgingarra and Wallal Downs for being the places that pick up the worst the rainfall here. The very heavy falls are also going to be more towards the northeast of the mining communities as well. Telfer could see 100 millimetres of rainfall, but for those around Marble Bar, Nullagine, and then even further inland towards Newman and Jigalong, just a couple of drops of rainfall can be expected out there. Heavy falls also expected south of Fitzroy Crossing, draining into the Fitzroy River as well, so we could be seeing some minor flooding of the Fitzroy River down towards Derby as we get towards early June, with about 100 millimetres also on the forecast for both Derby and Broome. Rainfall accumulations around Balgo and Kuakara could be as high as 150 millimetres as well, all driven in by a mid-level low pressure system that's going to develop through this weekend and then begin pumping heavy rainfall ashore through Sunday night into Monday morning, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, with rainfall expected to continue firing in for these locations, or as far out as about the 1st or the 2nd of June at this point in time. A lot of moisture in the atmosphere over the Indian Ocean. It still hasn't been sapped out by those tropical cyclones that we had earlier on in the year, unfortunately, so a lot of moisture still out there, and that's all going to be dragged in by cold fronts. They're going to be repeating, coming in for the southwest of Western Australia over the next 2 weeks or so. So a pretty wet period. This is stock standard stuff for this part of Western, or not for this part of Western Australia, but for Western Australia as a whole for this time of the year. Generally, though, we see this heavy rainfall materialising around the Gascoyne and the Murchison region. We don't normally see this into the Pilbara or the Kimberley region, which is what makes this unusual, but this is very easily explained. Mid-level moisture being dragged in and then dumped across interior parts of Western Australia. It's very rare that it happens up here, but we can see some heavy late season rainfall in this part of Western Australia, so again, we're not completely discounting this, and the rainfall will be heavy, that's for sure. Any questions or comments on it, let me know in the comment section down below. Cold front activity expected to be widespread across the southwest of Western Australia. Again, I'm not going to go too far into detail about this, but we've got cold front coming through tonight that could deliver up to 25 millimetres for some regions of the southwest Capes, and showers following in behind it through Friday, easing off on Saturday, but then returning on Sunday and Monday. Rainfall could pile on for parts of the southwest coastal region and then into the lower west as well around the Perth metro area. But 14-day rainfall accumulations now looking very healthy for regions of the southwest, and we're expecting cold front activity galore beyond about the 29th or the 30th of May. Yeah, out towards the 30th, another cold front coming through, and then 31st out to the 1st, another stronger cold front coming through, and then a powerful low pressure system setting itself up between the 2nd and the 3rd of June. This is all long range stuff on the forecast at this point in time, so take it with probably the whole salt shaker at this point in time, but it will be interesting to see what does materialise on the forecast models. We can say for sure that there'll be rainfall coming through tonight, like I said, potentially up to 25 millimetres, and then rainfall expected to return again for the 29th and the 30th, with a bit of a wet weekend coming before that as well. So we will have to wait and see what actually does materialise across the southwest of WA, but generally speaking, when we start to see the rainfall developing across the southwest of Western Australia, it is not far behind for South Australia, Victoria and Tasmania, and you can see that just briefly with the rainfall accumulations on the forecast there for these locations, looking a little bit healthier than what they have been for the last couple of months. Still not enough to quench the drought for Victoria and South Australia, but it will be very much welcome rainfall, that is for sure. Anyways, on that note, I'm going to leave it here. Stay safe if you're over in New South Wales. Let me know how the flooding is going for those locations as well, and if you've got any feedback or any comments for room for improvement, let me know in the comment section down below. But that is going to be all from me today. A special shout out, of course, to the channel sponsors. Without them, I could not run this show, so again, their support is much appreciated. But that is all from me today, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.